Hello again to a new interview in our EcoINET series. I'm here again with my colleague Matteo, and today we can welcome Davide Vettori, a long-term EcoINET member himself and currently our secretary. Davide is a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Environment, Land and Infrastructure Engineering at the Politecnico di Torino. Hi Davide, and thank you for being there.
Hello Anna, I'm Matteo.
Hi Davide.
Davide, we would like to start with an introductory question focusing on your research background. Can you explain to us what is your academic background and what is your main research topic?
Yes, of course. So in terms of academic background, I think the overall overall discipline is environmental fluid mechanics, which however covers quite a lot of different topics. In my case, my PhD in environmental fluid mechanics was focused on the interactions between seaweeds and the turbulent flow. So what I did during the PhD was to study how seaweeds move according to the characteristics of the flow that impact them. And I also studied a bit of biomechanical properties of seaweeds. So in that sense, my environmental fluid mechanics background is quite multidisciplinary, because I did quite a lot of fluid mechanics, but I also had to cover quite a bit of plant biomechanics, as it is called. And in terms of my main research topic, which I forgot to answer to, after the PhD, my focus shifted a bit towards the environmental side of environmental fluid mechanics, and for a while I worked more on plant physiology and plant biomechanics, but that was only a short time window, let's say. Now my main research topic is still on the interactions between plants and flows. But particularly with the Marie Curie fellowship I'm working on, I also deal with oscillatory flows, such as waves. Before, I only dealt with unidirectional flows, so I don't know, the flow in rivers or channels, and now I cover both coastal areas, where there are waves, of course, and currents, and also rivers and channels, inland waters, let's say.
Yeah, nice. Actually, one thing we noticed since we started the interview series is that all the people that are somehow related to EcoINET have a sort of multidisciplinary background that is very interesting and very nice. So this is a question that we ask to everyone, because one of the purposes of this series is as well also to show how important and useful can be EcoINET for early careers in ecohydraulics people. So I would ask you so as Hannah already mentioned, you are since a very long time involved in EcoINET. So I would ask you why you kind of joined EcoINET at the beginning and how it helped you to develop your career. Yeah.
Okay, so I think as for joining EcoINET, it was by chance in many ways, because I didn't know about the existence of EcoINET when I went to the International Symposium on Ecohydraulics in 2018, which was held in Tokyo. So I just went to the conference, to the symposium, because I was working on relevant topics, and I wanted to go to the symposium, of course, because it was in Japan. You know, you don't go to Japan very often. But then when I went there, I participated in a few events that the EcoINET committee had organized at the time. I think Anna, Davide, and Rosé were in the board at the time, and I realized that there were, you know, young people, young researchers that were working not in the same topic as myself, not many at least, but there were many people with the same that had to face the same challenges and issues that early careers have to face, of course, in terms of you know, stability and connections and networking. And how to deal with admin stuff, on how to look for a job. And so I just started getting in touch with a few of them. when I was in Tokyo, and I spent some time with them. And then I think I joined the network when I was in Tokyo, but then 2 years after, when the next symposium was held in Lyon, unfortunately it was online, but still I got the chance to chat with a few people. Then at the time I decided that maybe it was worth to join the committee if they wanted me, at least, because I thought that I had enough experience and I was old enough in a way to try and help younger researchers deal with the many challenges we face in our line of work, let's say. So that's how I got involved in the EcoINET and how I got in the committee and the board. So that was 3 years ago. And in terms of progress in the career, as I said, the topic I work on is not super common in the EcoINET community, or not even in the ecohydraulics community, to be honest. But EcoINET was more helpful as for the networking aspects, and as for example, how to connect with professors you would like to work with at conferences, or how to broaden your network, and how to get to know when some events were taking place and where people like myself were going for conferences, because my supervisor and the professors I worked with before joining EcoINET weren't super helpful in terms of go to this conference because it's gonna be an interesting one for you. It was just myself doing everything in that sense. So having people just like me with information and a bit of background in the ecohydraulics community was helpful in that sense.
Okay, that's always very interesting how the people got in contact to the EcoINET network, I think. Yeah, you have already mentioned it, that you have obtained a Marie Curie Fellowship. That is actually known to be a highly competitive grant to fund prestigious research projects. So can you summarize for us, what is this project actually focusing on? So a bit more detail.
Yeah, so like I was mentioning a few minutes ago, the project relates with how vegetation interacts with flows in coastal areas. And the very specific objective of our project is to assess how seagrass can contribute to protect coasts from erosion. So seagrass, I'm not sure if the two of you are super familiar with the term, but they are the grass-like plants that live underwater in the coastal areas. And supposedly they help a lot stabilizing the sediments at the bottom, and they can also attenuate waves quite a bit. So if a wave gets into a seagrass canopy, its height and its energy is dissipated throughout the canopy. So the very specific aim of the project is to study these aspects, both in terms of wave attenuation and sediment stabilization, to help all the stakeholders which are involved in coastal management to take into account what is the effect that they can have on physical processes. For example, if you know that some winds are forecasted for a specific date, and then you can get the wave height just using available models, then how can I take into account whatever effect a seagrass canopy that I have next to my beach or to my coast, how can it dampen the wave height? And then of course it helps protecting the coastline as well. So that's the broad project for you.
Nice. So what actual location are you working on?
So most of the project is lab-based here in Torino. We did several hundreds experiments last year, mainly in 2022. And then these works in the lab were about the wave attenuation side, the wave attenuation aspect of the project. And then to study the sediment stabilization, we couldn't do it in the lab because, as you may be aware, all the biological processes and biological aspects that contribute to whatever happens in natural habitat cannot be replicated in a laboratory because you don't have the benthic organisms there. So to do this part, we went to Cadiz in Spain, and we did some field experiments there 2 months ago, actually, end of September 2023, with some people there. And so the stabilization of the sediments was covered in the field. So it was lab and field.
Nice. Yeah, so nice. So I would come back maybe just on the technical, not the technical, sorry, on the Marie Curie aspect of your position. So, you often hear the story about people that applied several times for the Marie Curie before getting one. And no, as Hannah was mentioning, is not to be a highly competitive grant to get. So I would ask you if you could kind of summarize briefly what is the application procedure, at least the one you did when you applied, and give some hint, some ideas of what are kind of successful approaches to the grant, and what do you think was your strong point to get the grant, or the strong point of your project, actually.
Okay. So this question is a bit more complicated to answer because there are many sides of it. But so starting from the first part, in terms of application process, it's actually relatively simple because unless it has changed, and I'm not aware of it, but it was like this until last year, you just have to write a proposal, I think, with a 10-page limit. So 10 pages the maximum length. You write the proposal and you submit it into the portal together with your CV. So it's pretty straightforward if you go into the very technical, very administrative aspect of it. Going more into the technical details, though, these 10 pages, which seem quite a large space to cover in the beginning, they get super short when you start writing, because you need to cover a lot of aspects. A lot of things are supposed to be in the proposal. So in terms of a broad structure of a proposal, at the time the proposal was structured in 3 parts. The first was called excellence, then there was impact and implementation. And so in the first part, you candidate will have to basically convince the readers, the commission, that whatever you were going to do, both from a scientific point of view and from a career point of view, was excellent, so was super good. And the second part, which was impact instead, was more about how your research would impact not only your career, because a fellowship is about your career. It's not only about research. That's something maybe many people don't realize, but also how it will impact the society or the industry sector, whatever your work will focus on. And then the last part, which is probably the hardest for an early career, is the implementation. And that in that one you will have basically to spell out how you will make all the things that you have thought about, how you will make them happen. So if you list a lot of nice ideas and how I will do this, how I will do that, then in the implementation part, you will have to detail things out with a timetable as well, a Gantt chart, and you will have to convince people that read in very practical terms how things will happen. That was probably the trickiest part in terms of writing. If I think about, you were asking, I think, about a strong point or something like that, correct? Yeah, I'm not sure if there is, if I had a strong point, in the sense that I don't think the topic matters that much, or how to say, the approach. I think the very essential, the very fundamental point for a successful application is that as I said earlier, the application must be focused on your career as a researcher and not on the research itself. The research part is super important, of course, but first of all, you have to think about your career and how it's been developing and how you want to develop it. And then whatever research plan you have in mind, that must fit into the career path you are in. Because I think that's the key part. It's like, you know, like thinking about a story, and your past is whatever you've done so far. And then you have your plans for the future, and you've got to be very, very good at thinking about a project that fits well your path, so that it allows you, it helps you to develop your career and to reach whatever path you want to get into, like whatever long-term objective in your career you have. So I think that's the strong point. It must be a very coherent structure, a coherent application, because a coherent proposal. Because if I say, okay, I want to study, like I did, vegetation, the effect of vegetation in coastal areas, how it protects coasts, but my background is, I don't know, foil aerodynamics. So I'm an aerodynamical engineer, and my plan is to work on airplanes. So why would I do that? Okay. So I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, that was very useful, all the insight you gave us. Yeah. Maybe I would ask another question still about the application, the proposal. Maybe, yeah. So usually application likes where your research proposal itself is very specific, very with well-articulated question you want to answer without like being too broad, too general. So my very basic question is, I think it is the case as well for the Marie Curie, but does it apply as well to, you have to demonstrate that you have everything in my mind. For example, you mentioned that you were working in a lab setting, you had like some in-field data in Spain. So do you have already at the time of application demonstrate that your objectives are very specific, you already have your facilities, you already know where to go, you already have contact there? Do you have already to demonstrate
you don't have to demonstrate everything, of course, because the fellowship, as I said, is supposed to help you in your path to develop. But for you to start this path, some of the abilities and competencies you should have already, and then you develop something more during the fellowship, of course. In my case, for example, I had to demonstrate that where I am, we had the facilities to do the experiments. Otherwise, what's the point of coming here to do the experiments? Because I'm sure you know, but when you apply for a Marie Curie, you are not supposed to stay in the same place you are working on. You need to change the country you live in. So it's not something you do, you know, today, just because I woke up and I want to go there, I would go. And then instead, the field experiments, for example, I didn't have an experience in leading field experiments. I had done some field experiments before, but just as a collaborator, just helping out. But for this aspect, the fellowship was something that would allow me to develop abilities and competencies to lead a field experiment, and to, let's say, strengthen my proposal. I asked for a very important professor in the Netherlands, which had a lot of experience with field experiments and seagrass. I asked him to be a co-supervisor in the project, a co-mentor. So in that sense, I also had I demonstrated like this that I had the support I needed to develop, to do the field experiments, of course, and also to develop skills with that. But in general, in all the application, in all the proposal I had to write, I tried to, let's say, sell out things I had already done as experience to do something. Like I had a lot of experience doing experiments, and I had a lot of experience designing and building replicas of vegetation, which is useful in the lab because I cannot use real seagrass in the lab. So that was something I already had and I could use. But then when I didn't have some experience or ability to do things, that would be also something that can be sell out, because I could always say, of course, I needed the proofs, like you said, but I could say, okay, this professor where I'm going to go can help me out, you know, building these or analyzing these data or doing this experiment, whatever. So it's a big, it's like a big puzzle. Some parts you already have, and then the missing parts, it's up to you. It's on you to find a way to let's say supply them from outside, from external sources, you know, like professors, colleagues, or whatever, or even, you know, just training, because you can also you can attend courses and read books, of course, and articles, and just learn by yourself sometimes.
Nice. Maybe to conclude, can I ask you how long did it take to prepare all the application?
That's a very relevant question. So I think if you mean full-time, I think it takes about at least 3 months, 2-3 months full-time. In my case, it was a bit more spread out, because I got in touch with the professor I'm working on, I think like 15 months before applying. And then we spent like 6 months thinking about some topic that could fit both of our interests and my CV, of course. And so the first 6 months was only chatting some now and then about what we could do. And then I think I spent a few weeks just reading material about seagrass and waves, because as I said before, my background is not in coastal engineering, and I had never worked with seagrass before. But then when I dedicated full time to the writing of the proposal, I think it took me about 1 month and something, 5 or 6 weeks, let's say, because it was summer 2020. And then before submitting, I spent a few more days, I guess, just revising the draft a bit after I had some feedback from the research office here or the professors I work with, something like that. But yeah, 2-3 months, I think, are a good span. And it only lasts 2 years, by the way. So when I say that it's 10 pages long and it gets very short, it's only 2 years as well. So it gets very short after you start.
At the end, do you have to like have a sort of report, like at the end of?
Yeah, I haven't done it yet. But compared to standard European projects, the deliverables, as they are called, are very simple. I think there's only 2 or 3 deliverables to submit. One is about, I think, the activities, the career development plan. One is about, I think, sharing data in an accessible way. And the last one is the report at the very end of a project, in which I think I will have to do a summary of all the activities I've done, both research and network training, whatever. But as far as I understood it, people receive the template to fill out at the very end of the fellowship. So they want it like 1 or 2 months after the end of the fellowship or something like that. But there aren't many deliverables to submit.
Okay, nice. So unless Johanna have some other question.
No, maybe just one. So the time frame, when did you start and when is it going to be finished?
So I started in February 2022. And it's gonna end at the end of January 2024. But the starting date can be chosen after you are awarded the fellowship. When I got the fellowship, I had to start within 12 months from the signing of the agreement between my institution and the European Commission. But as I understand it, right now you can delay it a bit more. So you can start, I think, up to 2 years after you have applied, which helps a bit organizing your personal life, let's say, because it's not super simple, moving across countries. And if you do a global fellowship, in my case, it was just an individual fellowship, so I stayed within Europe. But when you do a global fellowship, that lasts 3 years. And of course, you have to travel outside Europe. So in terms of personal life, that probably helps more, because you've got to be abroad for at least 1 or 2 years, I think.
Nice. So I think we are at the end of our interview, roughly. And I would thank Davide for his time with us and share all this information with us as well.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys.
So I think, Davide, you will be at the International Symposium of Environmental Hydraulics. Are you?
Yeah, in Aberdeen, yeah.
So if anyone wants to meet... Okay. If at the moment, if anyone wants to meet Davide in person, he will be there in Aberdeen in June 2024. So thanks, Davide, for your time.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.